Scott. This is kind of a it could either be a cap or this could be a whole other rabbit hole that we start going down. So the last 3 weeks we've talked about like what happens if your relationship gets broken, and we've talked about the roles for the person who did the breaking and the person who it got broken on. And so this week I want to talk about I guess the things that I would say are the atmosphere for any healthy relationship. So this has to do with relationships that are broken, because while they may be in the ICU, they still need to breathe a healthy atmosphere, the same atmosphere that will keep you alive when things are good and healthy. So these largely come from Stan Tatkin's Principles of Secure Functioning. And what secure functioning is not it's not secure attachment, and it's not based on your feelings towards each other. It's based on I guess you could say it's more based on ethics and morals. Essentially, what is the right way to treat any other person? So we'll start by talking about the components of any good relationship, romantic or not. So as I go through some of these principles of secure functioning, I want you to think about friendships, work relationships, your interaction with the cashier at the grocery store, neighbors. I want you to think just kind of the wide swath of relationships, and check and see if my theory is right, that these components of secure functioning are underpinning any good relationship, any healthy or additive relationship. So they are fairness, justice, sensitivity, cooperation, shared power and authority. This is not, so shared power and authority is not an absolute power or absolute authority. For example, the cashier at the grocery store doesn't get a say in what groceries are in my cart or what I do with those groceries. So it's not always shared power and authority across everybody's life. It's for the task at hand. So it would be a pretty bad move for me to go through the checkout line, and instead of putting my groceries on the belt, or I guess there's a lot of self-checkout now, instead of snapping for the attendant to come over and throwing my groceries at them. That shared power and authority includes a respect for each other's roles. For the checker to slam my glass bottles around, and put a bunch of heavy stuff on my eggs and my bread. Again, there's not that shared respect. We both have power and authority here to ensure that the transaction goes well. I respect your power and authority, you respect my power and authority. So the shared power and authority has to do with the work that needs to get done in the relationship. Again, think about like divorced parents who want to focus on co-parenting. Shared power and authority, again, is not my right to say to you, well, this is how I think you should live your life because I think that's best for our kids. It's when it comes to things pertaining to our kids and our work together and co-parenting them, we're both the boss here. So if we're trying to think of the best school for Sally to go to, we both have a seat at the table, and we both talk about that. And we both respect one another's seat at the table. Nobody is trying to outmaneuver anybody else. If I have a problem with how you're thinking about it, again, in shared power and authority, I come right out and I say it. I don't know if I agree, and here are the reasons why. So in shared power and authority, you make your case. You use persuasion, cajoling, anything positive to attract someone to your side. You don't use threats, violence, and things like that. There's also absolute mutual protection, which again has to do with the task at hand. So in a marriage, I would say the task at hand is survival. It's helping each other live the best and safest life possible. Scott, your cat in the background is cracking me up. I love it. I love it. I love those kitty freakouts. So the absolute mutual protection has to do with the task at hand. So in a marriage, that's a much bigger deal than, again, like if you're in the checkout line. Absolute mutual protection means I won't threaten the cashier in any way, and they won't threaten me. Um, that means I'm going to, listen closely, maintain good eye contact, and I'm going to do my part, not pull anything, weird or unexpected, so that this person doesn't have to, get on the defensive. There's also respect and protection of primacy. What primacy means is that feeling or that status of I am the number one person here. So, for example, let's say that you and a really good friend decide to go off to sleepaway camp in the summer, and you're going to be camp counselors and you're co-counselors in there. That means that when the campers have a problem with something that's going on, you don't throw your partner under the bus, and they don't throw you under the bus. You don't hold a private powwow with the campers and say, well, we all talked about it when we voted, and I'm sorry, Jerry, this is what you have to do. No, you and Jerry are the boss. And you protect that primacy in each other. And again, in a marriage, it's a much bigger deal, or in a committed relationship, it's a much bigger deal. The primacy means there is no other priority in my life that you can't cut in front of, within reason. So, there's that whole adage in recovery: anything you put before your recovery, you will lose. That doesn't mean that, let's say it's a big event on the night of your, home meeting. That doesn't say that you say to your spouse, sorry, I can't, go to your Lifetime Achievement Award on Tuesday night because that's my home group. You say, I'll catch another meeting. This is one of those events that I can miss my home meeting for. I'll catch another meeting or two this week, and, we can make it work. It's that ability to assert your right to be the priority with your spouse, especially when it matters the most. There's also collaboration, which is mutually working together. Collaboration isn't I throw my ideas at you and you throw your ideas at me. Collaborate, or I work inside and you work outside. That's not actually collaboration. It's we work side by side, and we are both mutually invested and mutually responsible for the outcome here. Effective co-regulation of stress and distress. So, for example, last night, one of my sons was out hanging out with some friends, and they were doing a scavenger hunt. And I wasn't expecting him to come by our house, so I'm making dinner, and all of a sudden there's an urgent knock at the door, and of course our dogs start going crazy, which is not my favorite thing in the world. And the knock gets more and more urgent, like it's this pounding like this on the door. So I'm thinking like a car is on fire, there's some crazy person at the door, what's going on? So I open the door just a crack, and I look outside, and it's my son and this pack of 12-year-olds. And I said to him, you can't knock on the door that way. It drives your dogs crazy. And then I turned and I left the door. I didn't say hello to anybody. I wasn't friendly, anything like that. And, the friends did the thing and they left, and he came back, and I said, hey, I need to apologize. That wasn't the right way to open the door. Sorry, I wasn't more friendly. And I said, just a thought, the way you knock on a door is going to set the person up to come to the door in a certain way. So unless there's really a fire outside, you never have a need to knock on the door like that. Again, there's effective co-regulation, or awareness of the lack of effective co-regulation there. The way he came into the space wasn't great for me, and the way that I came into the space wasn't great for him. In secure functioning relationships, we watch that. We watch for signs of distress and stress. Anymore these days, you work with somebody who's in like a helping profession, like the grocery store or a server, at a restaurant. I see a lot of stress there. And one of the things I try to do, not just to make sure that I get a good experience there, but that, I'm not that person, is I smile a lot. I talk to my servers. I'm understanding when things are slow. That's part of that co-regulation. I'm relying on you to do something for me. So I'm going to set you up to do it well. I'm going to make your job as easy as possible. I'm not going to add extra stress unless that's absolutely necessary. And if I am going to add extra stress, I'm going to make sure I do it in a way where you'll actually be motivated to help me. So if I have to call customer service or something like that with a problem, or talk to a neighbor where there is a problem, Again, I'm not going to come knocking on the door like this, and I'm not going to make demands. I'm going to be clear about what I want and need, but I'm also going to make sure that I keep my audience. I want you to work with me. Smiling can be effective co-regulation, using a tone of voice that's not threatening. When it comes to a marriage or a closer, more intimate relationship, touch is the best co-regulator. So you're having a hard conversation and you put a hand on the back of somebody's arm just to communicate, hey, I'm your friend. I don't want to go to war here. So those are the tenets of secure functioning. And as you can see, they have application in every relationship you have. Think of a great relationship you have that hasn't included most of those. Or think of a good relationship you have that's grossly violated any of those. You probably can't. Because once one of those goes out the window, or enough of those go out the window, and it doesn't take many, you don't have a good relationship anymore. You're at war, not working together. So when it comes to couples in recovery, and especially in light of the two roles that we've talked about over the last 3 weeks, when the relationship gets broken, I'm going to put out there today that these secure functioning principles need to be in the backdrop at all times. You have to be thinking about these. Even if you're in addiction recovery and your emotions are all over the place, even if you're reeling from betrayal and most days you're really, really pissed at the person that you're with, I would submit that both of you are still responsible to hold the line on these secure functioning principles, because this is the ultimate goal that you're working towards. I've seen couples in recovery who have held on to their relationship. They didn't get divorced, they stayed together, but they didn't create anything that was worthwhile being in. So they were together forever and miserable. Now there's some caveats there. And I'm sure I have both some addicted folks and some partners on the webinar right now that may have their fists clenched and they're saying, that's crap, bad things just happened. So let me walk through some of these and show you what they might look like, secure functioning, even a day after D-Day. So for example, one of the first ones, fairness and justice. You have to remember that bonded relationships are always pay to play. Your ability and your right to have an unconditionally loving relationship was over with childhood. That's the only time in our life where we are entitled to that, where it must be that. Everything else after that is you bring value to this or you don't come to this. As much as I love human beings and as great as they can be and are, I think at the end of the day, our motives are always at least adjacent to self, if not centered on self. So we always look at, what am I getting out of this relationship and is it good for me? So instead of seeing that as a problem to secured connection, we incorporate that into, oh, this is how it works. So we should always be looking at in our relationships, is this good for me and good for you? I should watch out for your interest as much as I watch out for mine. So gross violations of these secure functioning principles in a pay-to-play relationship, they actually have to be dealt with. So while both of you may be guilty of violating things like fairness and justice, what's the bigger violation? I spent $50 more than I told you I would, or I carried on affairs and a secret addiction. This is not to say that one party is guilty and the other one is not. But when there's gross violations of these secure functioning principles, the person who violates it has to prove that whatever allowed them to violate that principle of secure functioning before is no longer in them. So it's unfair to keep secrets from your partner. It's not just to carry on something in your life that's hurtful to your partner and they don't know anything about it and don't have a say in. So part of how you restore justice is you may, for a time, a significant amount of time, you may be on the side of where I owe you more information. I'm the one who's starting first. I'm the one who's lifting heaviest in the transparency, in the emotional accountability, in the department of I'm keeping an eye on my temper and my least desirable qualities. Because you took a lot from the relationship in your addiction. Things like shared power and authority. Again, that's the gold standard, but there are some situations like a marriage that's been broken by infidelity where complete shared power and authority may not make a lot of sense until you prove that you can handle it. So the other night, my 9-year-old and I are working on his Pinewood Derby car, and he's real interested in the power tools and wanted to do a lot of the sanding. So we traced a design and we used a jigsaw to cut it out. And I wasn't even going to ask him if he wanted to go at the jigsaw, because that's just looking at creating some stumps on his hand. And so I did the jigsaw part, and then I showed him how to use the sander, the little handheld power sander. I showed him how to keep his fingers out of the way. That was totally, like, he's proved to me that he can do that. He has the motor skill, he has the focus, he has the desire, he has the strength, like he can do that. So it makes sense to share that power with him. We're putting in weights and we had to use a drill. I gave him a go at some of the drilling. It didn't go so well. So I didn't just sit there and say, no, you got to do it straighter. You got to hold it more. Like, he didn't have the capacity to hold the heavy battery pack and get it at the right angle. So that's not something that we kept agreeing that he should be doing. I said, I'll do that part. It's much like post-discovery or post-disclosure. The person who has broken the relationship has not shown that they can handle the power and authority that they've been given. That's part of it's part of the betrayal. Is, I thought you had this and you didn't. You told me you had this and you really didn't. So for a time, we might agree that it's not a good idea for you to hold absolute power and authority here, or co-power and authority with me. We may put you on probation for a while.
Either John or me has frozen. Can somebody pop into the chat if it's
mutual protection? Was I frozen there, Scott?
You froze for a second, yeah.
Shoot.
For about 10 seconds. So back up 10 seconds.
Okay. So again, agreeing together that it might be a good idea for one of us to be on probation because we showed that we abused the power and authority, and set the terms of the probation. What gets you off here? Well, you got to show that you're honest. You got to show that you aren't going to hurt me in this way again. Absolute mutual protection. This is one that I think a lot of folks who are in the addicted and betrayer chair, this is gold for you. This is a secure functioning relationship principle that you can start to uphold from day one. I really slacked here. I didn't protect you. I may have thrown you under the bus to justify my behavior. Turn on a dime on that and you will see your relationship tenor change very, very quickly. I'm all about protecting you. I'll do whatever it takes to make sure that you're safe. Me talking to my family and my support people in a way that throws you under the bus, never, ever again, not going to do it. Again, it's pay to play. If you took a withdrawal through secrecy and addiction from the relationship, you have to pay it back before you start getting your regular dividend check, before you're considered fully vested again. Respect and protection of primacy. Again, in recovery, I think there has to be a lot of negotiation around what takes priority. This isn't a forevermore thing. Think about it as if you wake up one day with a terrible cold, or maybe you get COVID. Your job is really, really important to you. Is it that important to you that you're going to go to work sick and get other people sick and prolong your own suffering? Maybe not. You might say, job, you're based on the symptoms today, job is taking a back seat because we've got to attend to what's going on here. So again, in a relationship, post-discovery, post-disclosure, that protection of primacy, you might have to think the long game on this. Not, are you my number one person in all moments, but am I doing what I need to ensure that you can be my number one long term? Sometimes that means I have some stuff to sort out inside of me. Sometimes that means I have to learn how to be consistent and show up, and I do that by going to meetings. So while there are some modifications to these, the principle is still the same. The secure functioning is always running in the background of any good repair. And like I said, both of you are responsible for it. In some of these examples, like the shared power and authority, any modification to this is best made when both of you are in agreement on it. And I'll say for you folks that have betrayed through addiction, trust your perception just a little bit less than you normally do. Come to terms with the fact that you were terrible at all of this while you were acting out. You can't be good at this when you're acting out, because acting out and keeping secrets like that is not a two-person orientation. That's a one person, I'll do what's best for me. So recognizing that you're behind the curve is not a bad thing. In fact, I see with couples where the person who's done the betraying, the sooner they recognize, yeah, I'm behind the curve, I'm not as great as I thought I was at this stuff. The sooner the person who's done the betraying recognizes that, the faster the relationship can start healing. It's not a bad thing to be in a one down position, especially if you know why you're there and what you have to do to get out of it. And I guess the last word I would say to folks who have done the betraying, this is something I get often. Well, if we're both supposed to doing this, if we're both supposed to be doing this, why do I always have to go first? And I'll say to them, why wouldn't you want to go first, even when things are good? Why wouldn't you rush to be the first person to say, hey, this feels unfair in our relationship. Let's address that. Let's make sure this is good for both of us. So this is a lot of that practice. And a lot of times in addiction, the way we want to handle our relationships, well, I'll do it if you do it. We don't want to do that vulnerable thing. This is where you can prove your chops as a leader in your relationship. Lead with the vulnerability. Be the one who's willing to fight the hardest for this. I'm not just going to do it because you're going to do it. I'm going to do it because it's the right thing to do. I would do it with the cashier at the grocery store. I would do it with the person who's serving us dinner. I'll do it with my mechanic. Why wouldn't I do it with you? We probably have more to talk about there, and I'll probably get ideas for that based on the questions, but that is secure functioning principles and how it relates to the roles after betrayal.
Thanks, Jon. We have some questions left over from our last session, so I'm going to ask those first, but type your questions into the Q&A. But just to review, I was scribbling very quickly. The principles are fairness, justice, sensitivity, cooperation, shared power and authority, absolute mutual protection, respect and protection of primacy, and it goes both ways, collaboration, which is working together, and co-regulation of stress and distress. Did I miss any? Did I get them all?
No, that's it.
I got them all. So I do have one question. So the one that strikes me as the hardest to maintain probably after D-Day, basically, would be co-regulation of stress and distress, because 99 times out of 100, the betrayed partner does not want to be co-regulated in that way by the person who caused the stress and distress. It doesn't work very well. So, I mean, obviously all of the dynamics change and all of the balance of power shifts a little bit, but yeah. Is that the one where it has to shift the most, and maybe you have to go elsewhere for this co-regulation?
I think the definition of what regulation is and how it's achieved has to be expanded. And again, that's not just, post D-Day. So for example, the thing I was most excited about having a baby in the house again was holding them until they fell asleep. I love that whole feeding until they sleep or them falling asleep on you. So my daughter did that about the first 3 months of her life. And then after that, my wife and I are like, what's going on here? We can't comfort her. We can't make her go to sleep. And one night out of desperation, my wife just laid her in the crib, thinking well, we could try this. She went right to sleep. The kid wants to be left alone when it's nap time most of the time. So she'll do the whole feed and cuddle and all of that. But when it's time to actually sleep, she wants us gone. She doesn't want us touching her. So regulating her is not doing the soft and cuddly, I'm here, you're safe thing. It's actually doing what you want in this moment and what you need in this moment is some space to yourself to fully decompress. So in coupleships, regulation isn't just about, I'm here, what do you need? Sometimes it's about, I don't want to see your face. Get out of my space. I'll come to you when I'm ready. And the effective co-regulation there is, you got it. I'm out. but not so far that you can't reach me. I'll stay close enough that when you're ready, you can reach me, but I'm not going to be hovering around you. That's effective co-regulation. Some people, as a baseline, really, really like touch, and other people don't. It's too much. There's not something to heal or figure out there. It's just differences in nervous system. So knowing with your partner, not just in general, whether words or touch is more effective for them, but like moment to moment. What's going to be most effective? Touching you, saying something to you, not saying something to you, doing something for you. There are so many avenues to effective co-regulation, and most people make the mistake of they just do what makes sense to them or what they would want, and if that doesn't work, they'll say, well, nothing will work for you. Well, you're dealing with a different creature. It's not you. So keep at it. I mean, heaven forbid you should ask and say, what would make you feel best in this moment? Well, you can get out of my face. That's what would make me feel best in this moment. Okay. I trust you. I believe you.
Yeah. I this, like you said, this is any relationship. You know, I have two cats, and my cat before this, they're all very different with that. You know, one of them liked to sleep on the pillow, touching my head with her paw, touching me. The other one, you know, the second one, she wants to sleep near me, but definitely not touching.
Yeah.
And then the third one now wants to be under the covers with me. So they just have different needs, and you know, I have to accept that they have different needs, and the needs do change from. I mean, the cats are pretty consistent, but you know, if they're mad at me, you know, less close sometimes is what they want. So yeah, situationally.
I would also say, in part of your question, Scott, you bring up a good point. In co-regulation, it really does take two. So there's the giver and the receiver, and both have to be open to it. So again, the whole concept of co-regulating effectively is scrubbed if you guys have if two people have too much resentment towards each other to either give or receive it. So that's the beauty of these principles. When you set it, like I talked a lot in the last couple webinars about setting the bar high, this is part of it. If this is where we set the bar high, we want to be able to do this for each other. It becomes incumbent on both the giver and the receiver to play ball, right? If we want effective co-regulation, I can't do this. Like, no, I don't need anything from you. I'm fine. I actually have to open myself up to that space to come in there. And it doesn't have to be all the way open. It can be a little thing. You know, a pat on the back would go a long way right now. And maybe that's not like the problem solver for you, but it's like, that's as far as I can open to you. And so, you know, I'm going to step up as far as I can, and I'm going to expect you to meet me.
Yeah. And all of these principles, I think, you know, it's a two-way street, and the dynamic will change after a betrayal.
Yes.
Yeah. So, okay, let's jump into the questions. These are from last week, and we'll try to go through them quickly. The short version of this question, this is from a betrayed partner. When I'm angry, I go straight to leaving the relationship altogether, which does lead to some changes, but I also fear this is causing damage and would love other options to turn to in my anger, which is a great question considering our topic today of the atmosphere for a healthy relationship. So what are the other options instead of I'm leaving you?
Yeah. So what leaving does is it sends a very clear message that this is not okay. I would say that leaving is like the chemotherapy of the relationship change world. It will get the point across, but it can also, if overused, it can kill a lot of what's good. So I think looking at how willing you are to be really, really direct. You're doing this, and I need you to knock it off, please. Willingness to observe patterns and point them out. I've asked you 5 times to tell me about this, and you don't. What's up with that? So you can actually use your anger to make your partner accountable. I need you to tell me why you're not getting this. I need you to tell me why this isn't important. That leaving reflex, again, if overused, that can be a lot of like, I just want some control here, or I want the control here. You might have a hard time sharing that power. So another way to look at that, and this is kind of a long-term behind the scenes thing, you might have to focus, or you might have to put some focus on again, that shared power and authority, the nature of a good relationship is nobody holds all the power. So that means there are some times where I'm going to be open because I'm not completely in control. And you have to look at your tolerance level for that. Leaving, I would say, of all the options, leaving starts to get on the, like I said, it's like the chemotherapy of relationship stuff. It is the most direct, nonviolent way to communicate, I'm not okay with this. And, so if you look at what else might be required, if literally, you're in a place where the only other thing that would get the point across is to crush skulls, leaving might be the best thing that you can do. And you might want to consider, if this is the only thing that gets a point across in my relationship, really, what kind of relationship do we have?
Thank you. The next one here, these are all three of these from last week are spot on for this week. This is from a betrayed partner. I feel like my cheating partner using the 3-second rule would help me feel safe. Is having a boundary of asking him to always use the 3-second rule reasonable? For those who don't know, the 3-second rule, I'm an addict. If I have a sexual thought that's addictive or unwanted or against my relationship, whatever, I have 3 seconds to get that thought out of my head. I can either humanize the person I'm having a thought about, think about them as someone's wife or mother or sister, and having, like, they're at the grocery store to buy food for their family, not to be hit on by me. So I get it out of my head, or I just think about something else within 3 seconds, the score of last night's game or whatever. So that's the 3-second rule. So is that a reasonable boundary to ask for?
I go to the principle of mutual protection. And if your partner allowing fantasy to make a nest in their head or stay too long has been dangerous, of course it's in bounds to say, I need you practicing this, because again, it's pay to play. If you've shown me in the past that you're willing to let this come in and mess things up and, not do anything about it. It's like the stance I had at the beginning of my marriage. I told my wife, there are no mammals that aren't humans that can ever live in our house with us. Of course, that's changed for me now. I've gotten a soul, and I'm a dog person now. But in the beginning, that was in bounds. And I had my reasons, and it wasn't just like, oh, I think it's gross. Like, there was some emotional tie-in there, and to say that this isn't going to work for me, that's a big part of what making a relationship work is you have to lay out your parameters.
So thank you. The next one here, and by the way, the 3-second rule, like when I'm teaching my work groups to sex addicts and porn addicts, this is one of the tools we teach them, like, use this tool. If you want to get sober, if you want to make changes, use this tool. I'm a big fan of the 3-second rule. This next question also falls into this. As an addict, is it a good idea to share suppressed thoughts, which could mean a lot of things, suppression, with our partner, even if we feel some of those thoughts may be hurtful or harmful to our betrayed partner?
That depends on what your partner has asked for. It is not okay for you to decide unilaterally, I'm not going to share this with you, because I think you'll react this way, or I think that'll hurt you, without checking it out with your partner. How much do you want to know about what goes on inside my head? I have some partners who say, I want to know everything. And again, that it's that two-way street. It's not, I want to know everything, and then I get to act however I want in response to that. It's, I want to know everything, and I'm going to make that a constructive experience for the two of us. There's other people that I've worked with, a partner has said, I just want to know the generals. I don't want the gory details. And that's your partner's right to choose, not your right to make a choice for them.
Yeah. And betrayed partners often, and this is off topic a little bit, often think they want to know everything. And then when they know everything, they realize, oh, this is not great, because, and I think it makes it hard for them to engage in fairness and justice, and since when they know everything. So sometimes, I will coach addicts. Look, if you do something, you better tell your wife. If you think about it, but quickly get rid of it and don't do it, you start to talk about it. You got to talk about it with your sponsor and your therapist, but maybe not with your wife if that's going to trigger her. But make sure, okay it with her the level of information she wants or he wants. So yeah, which goes back to, fairness and justice and shared power and authority and mutual protection. I mean, all of this stuff um, is healthy. Um, so I mean, if we don't have these principles, even in the face of betrayal, we're going to struggle. I mean, what happens when these principles are completely gone?
You are at war and there's no other choice. You look at tensions around the globe, and as long as there is a diplomatic channel open, hey, I think we have a mutual interest here, and here's how we're going to go about getting it. As long as those principles can be adhered to, there's no need for war. If those principles are violated, thrown out the window, do not exist, that's just our default setting as human beings.
So if we go to war, can we come back from it? Can we come back from the brink of war and still save our relationship?
Yes, if these types of principles are the things that you're saying, no, this is what's acceptable. Fighting this out to the death is not acceptable for us. If we find ourselves in that place, we are both wrong. That's not what we're about here. This is what we're about here. That's why these principles need to exist, because again, your biology, your neurology as a human being is, you are more built for war than love. So these principles, this is the blessing of our outer cortex and our ability to think about ideas, is these principles are part of what helps govern that base instinct to just destroy all opposition. And actually helps you create something that can be collaborative, which is better for everybody.
And parts of our brains are actually wired for collaboration. I mean, evolutionarily, I mean, this is why we have serotonin and oxytocin and some of those other bonding chemicals.
What I mean by that is the war circuit will always have the power to override the collaboration circuit.
Yeah, the fight, flight, freeze part shuts down the rest of the brain and takes over. The lizard brain is dominant in times of crisis. So, okay, I can see why PACT, P-A-C-T therapy makes a ton of sense. How do you feel about doing couples work with a PACT therapist who is not a CSAT versus a PACT therapist who is a CSAT? I don't know what PACT stands for, so I'm guessing you do.
Yeah, PACT stands for the Psychobiological Approach to Couples Therapy. Stan Tatkin's the founder of that. Those of you who are familiar with it, you can hear PACT all over in my relationship philosophy, because that is my orientation as a couples therapist. PACT, I think in its truest form, doesn't require a ton of specialization, because it's dealing with the couple system and what's going on. So in the case of betrayal trauma, the PACT therapist is not going to come in, or I should say a PACT therapist who's really adhering to the model is not going to come in and make a value judgment about who should be feeling what. The PACT therapist is going to help the coupleship understand what happened and focus them on the task of dealing with the feelings that are on the table with these secure functioning principles in mind. So let's say, for example, a couple comes into my office and, she says, I'm upset that he's been looking at porn. And he says, well, she shouldn't have a problem with porn. This is kind of a standard thing that I see. If we go back to fairness, justice, sensitivity right there. In PACT therapy, we talk about how perception is reality, and that is what couples are dealing with each other, is the perception. There's also like a secure functioning principle that says if one of us is in distress, the other one comes to assist that person. So if the person who's saying, I don't think porn's a big deal, you shouldn't be worried about it, that's not a lot of distress. The person that says this is awful. In PACT therapy, we push the couple to secure functioning. That's what we expect. And so in that case, it would be just as valid to say, she's crying about how the dishes are loaded in the dishwasher, and it's not about porn. Why aren't you doing anything about that? Why can't you help her with that? Why aren't you attending to each other? So it's possible, I think, to find good PACT therapy for betrayal trauma where someone is not a CSAT. I would also say that there can be some, no therapist is completely a blank slate. And one of the things in CSAT training we're focused to look at is the partner's emotions and understanding where they're coming from. So something that without that viewpoint could look, crazy or, out of whack. It's very understandable because we're understanding there was a threat to the primary relationship. There was a betrayal, and in betrayal, that intimate partner betrayal, we see kind of the same symptoms across the board, whether it's porn, money, sex, any of that. It's that the primary relationship is now not a safe place, and we tend to act a little out of the ordinary when our visceral feeling of safety is impaired.
Yeah, and I this is something I deal with the guys at my work groups is, I want to look at porn. She doesn't want me to. Well, she doesn't. Why doesn't she want you to? She says she feels betrayed and unsafe. And my thought is, well, shouldn't you be protecting her from feeling betrayed and unsafe? Don't you love her enough to protect her from those feelings?
Yeah.
Which do you love more, her or porn? And, with an addiction, in active addiction, it can be a tough call sometimes, which is sad, but that doesn't mean the addict loves porn more. It just means the addict is.
Yeah. And that's, I don't know if I'm frozen or Scott is frozen.
Probably me. You're still going. Nope, you're frozen. Yeah, now he's frozen. Okay. So I think it's John who's frozen. Can somebody chat me and let me know?
I'm guessing it's me.
You're back.
I think I'm back.
You're back. Okay. Let's go to the next question here. What does it mean if the addict is sober for almost 2 years now, but not fully into recovery of the deeper issues, the underlying trauma, things like that, and he's able to own the wrongness of the behaviors, porn use, objective, etc. Yet he always adds, but you also brought things into this relationship that were unhealthy and abusive to me, and you need to sort your own stuff out if I'm to stay in this relationship. Is this the power shift that you have spoken about, or something else?
Bing, bing, bing. That is the power shift. Again, both parties are always capable of doing wrong and doing harm to each other. There are degrees. That doesn't excuse anybody, but you have to deal with where the blood is gushing out first. And again, unintentionally bringing stuff in from childhood that makes a relationship difficult versus intentionally keeping a secret and deceiving your spouse, those are different. That there actually is to use the math term, there's an order of operations there first, and you have to deal with the betrayal first. So that is that power. That's that flipping the power dynamic. It's usually a big fat red flag. If there's not remorse or recognition, mine's the greater sin. Whatever my grievances are now, I don't have a right to them because of what I did. So I have to repair what I did, and then maybe we might have the ability to dive into how we've worked together overall. But first things first, we have to staunch the bleeding from betrayal.
Yeah, and by the way, this is one of the difference between the prodependence model and the codependence model. Is the codependence model, it gets kind of blamey on the betrayed partner, like you brought your own crap into this relationship and you're exacerbating problems. And prodependence is like, yeah, you probably brought your own crap into it, and that may be playing in, but you didn't cause the addiction. You didn't, tilt your husband's head back and pour alcohol down his throat.
Yeah.
So let's deal with that first and see how you can take care of yourself at the same time and be helpful to the addict without taking on the addiction. I mean, the addiction is not your fault.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you may or may not have issues. Nobody gets through life unscathed.
Well, and the whole goal of repair is not to, sustain any sort of imbalanced, unfair relationship. It's to get both of you in the yoke together, pulling together on equal footing, co-bosses, co-captains, so that you can finally start building the relationship you should have had from the beginning, which is one where we watch each other's back, we're aware of what is, off inside of us that can hurt other people, and we help each other with that. So the whole well, you have issues too, pointing out and naming issues in each other is largely unhelpful because it misses the whole point. It's not about who's the most wrong here. It's about what can we do right now to alleviate the suffering in our relationship. And if you've been addicted and lying and betraying, what you can do is stop that and become sensitive. There's kind of like any other road doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because that is the big glaring, that's the big glaring problem for now. That doesn't mean there's no other problems, and there never will be. It's why wouldn't we take care of the, deepest, most blood gushiest wound? We can deal with that small stuff later. Let's just make sure we don't bleed out and die here.
Yeah, and the principles of the good relationship, they keep us kind of centered, and the bleeding, gushing wound may push the dynamic over here a little bit. And as this gushy wound heals, it can come back, and we can start working on deeper interpersonal issues and deeper personal issues. But yeah, we have to stop the bleeding first.
Yeah.
We have to do triage before we, start doing the little things.
Yeah.
Next question, a great question here. Where can we learn more about what these principles are and how these principles work? Stan Tatkin, which book?
So he has a lot. The book that it's clearest in is Wired for Love.
Yes.
But he actually, like his book, We Do, I forget all the other names, but his stuff, like that's where the secure functioning idea comes from. I will say there, he has written a little bit about like affair and betrayal specific stuff, but you won't get the specific model there. But the somebody in the chat just said your brain on love as well. Yeah. Again, this is not a model to just handle betrayal. This is a model to push the development of a couple into, we're both fully adults here. And I would say in addiction, you're not fully adult. You're not exercising your capacity to deal with your problems and to be an active participant in life. You're hiding in some ways. So this model pushes that growing up. In betrayal, there's a regression. We feel small, powerless, helpless because we are in betrayal. It's not a screw loose in your mind. It's, you've just been burned, to a crisp. And there's some healing and some progression to be done there. And emotionally and psychologically, the way healing and progression works is to set a bar that challenges us and to push for it. There's plenty of betrayed spouses I've worked with who have come to me and said, I'm so angry, and I've hit my partner and I've never done that before. I've called them names I would never call my worst enemy. And they'll say, I don't like that. And I'll say, yeah, that sounds awful. Sounds like you have a reason. They're like, you're not crazy for feeling that way. And that's where we stop first. All right, you're not crazy for feeling that way, but you still don't want to behave that way. We can do something about that, and you probably should do something about that. The whole purpose of this model is to really highlight what a fallacy it is to build a relationship that's based on I do what I feel when I feel it. And instead it's I do the right thing because it's the right thing to do.
Because we put the relationship, we value the relationship enough to do the right thing, to give of ourselves. I mean, that's what being in a relationship is.
Yeah.
If we're not willing to do that, we should probably stay single. I mean, and there's nothing wrong with being single. I'm saying, yeah.
Their relationships are pay to play. If you don't want to pay, that's fine.
Yeah, and that's the truth. Okay, this all seems, I love this last question. This all seems quite far out of reach for me and my sex addict partner. How much personal work do both the addict and the betrayed partner have to do on early recovery and betrayal trauma symptoms before they can expect some traction on this? This is a great question.
Yeah, great. I love the frame up here, before you can expect traction, a lot. I wouldn't say to avoid this work because you're not getting traction. Part of when I help couples, part of the traction they get is coming together and very clearly seeing what they're not doing and what's not working. Again, that's how development is pushed. I watched my little girl on the floor last night. She's playing with a toy and she flings it across the room. She doesn't crawl yet, but she starts leaning towards it and reaching, like she's getting the idea. There's something I want out here, and it's going to push her to grow. It's going to push her to develop the ability. It's the same thing here. So this is not a replacement for individual work. This is not going to save you from doing individual work. This is to get you very, very clear on what must happen and what type of a relationship you two must provide for each other. And then there is a huge piece of, well, I got to do my homework. If I want my spouse to be, fair and just with me, I have to look at how committed I actually am to fairness and justice, because it's not fair or just to say you have to do it and I don't. So there is a long way to go, but I'm a big believer in setting the sights high even early on, not to discourage or demoralize, but to remember there's something that's bigger and better than both of us that we're shooting for here. We're not just looking to feel better now, we want to do better.
So how long does this typically take? I mean, the relationship comes in and they're at war. How long does it typically take?
Expect at least a year for stabilization after betrayal, because there's a ton to learn. Like I'm thinking in this question again, like betrayal trauma symptoms. One of the most effective ways to address that is to get the person who's done the betraying sensitive and able to attend to those. Right away, again, that's not going to look like I want you to give me a big hug. But it's far more efficient and I think far more useful in the healing for the original source of the wound, again, to show there's nothing up my sleeves. I wouldn't ever do that again. And that, all of you who are in this position know how many corners have to be turned to get that. So expect about a year for stabilization. There's a lot to be.
And that a year for stabilization, like good stabilization, involves rigorous honesty on the part of the addict, including full therapeutic disclosure.
Yep. Because that has to do with fairness and shared power. If I'm holding any secrets, I'm holding power from you.
Yeah. It's just going to slow the healing process down. When couples come in, you usually recommend, let's put the relationship on a safe shelf for 6 months and revisit it. No major decisions about I'm leaving you, or it's time to bring the players in.
I used to, I don't anymore, because I've come to realize that part of the key of the betrayal is that the partner who was betrayed was not allowed to make the choices they needed to make. So I really shy away from that now, because I don't want to be party to recreating that. What I'll tell the couples is, I can't guarantee exactly what your relationship is going to look like after this, but if you guys stick with this process, you will have the relationship you should have had from the beginning. That may be a really great friendship. That may be, a passionate romance. So I don't encourage couples to put the relationship on the shelf and not make decisions because of that sensitivity to the partner who's been betrayed. I do say what it looks like today may not be how it looks tomorrow. And if you can stick with it, things change.
And you and I have both seen couples end up with much stronger, much more intimate relationships than they had before the betrayal, and certainly before the discovery of betrayal, because there's now these principles of good relationships are things that happen over the recovery process. I just have to share this last little comment with you. Every betrayed partner on the call probably just rolled their eyes when you said, "I will never do that again." And I love that comment, because of course you do.
Yeah, and so here's my answer to that. I'm sure anybody on this call who co-sleeps with somebody, you probably don't have a policy around vomiting in the bed. Because I think it goes without saying, we're not going to plan on that happening. We don't want it to happen. It's not like we say you get 2 free barfs a year. We don't plan on it happening. However, I bet the unspoken agreement is, or the spoken agreement ought to be, if you happen to vomit in the bed, you clean it up fast. You don't leave me in it. You don't leave yourself in it. So to me, that's what that I'll never do that again sentiment is about. It's bigger than just the behavior. It's I'll never leave you hanging in my mess again. I'm going to be on top of it, whether it's relapse or whether it's I left the toilet seat up. Like, I'm going to become sensitive to you and I will never leave you alone in suffering, whether I caused it or not. Now, how much you want me to be a part of helping you with your suffering, that's up to you. And you can say no to me. You can tell me to get lost and I'll understand that. But my stance is I will never tolerate, I will never let myself off the hook again for leaving you in a spot where you're suffering alone and I'm not here, whether I made the mess or not.
And the betrayed partner's ability to take that in is going to depend on where these fairness dynamics are right now. And it's going to shift, and they may not be able to take that in, and that's normal. But a year from now, you might be able to take that in.
It's pay to play, and you can say to your partner, "Your money's no good here right now. So I appreciate the sentiment, but I'm not going to be trusting you very much. I'll be watching you."
Yeah, I need your actions to back that up. Words, not so much. You've lied to me a lot. So now it's time. Now it's time to pay with real money, which is actions instead of the IOU. What a great session. I hope we continue kind of this air of a good relationship thing. I will get this posted right away, so y'all can go back and go through the principles again. I suspect a lot of you will. We will be back here in 2 weeks. Jon, thank you as always for your time and expertise, which is incredibly valuable to all of us. Anything you want to say to take us out?
No, just thank you, everybody. And I really appreciated the pushback today in the questions and the chat. My goal here is not to just teach. I love discussion. So thank you for your perspectives and for being here today. I'll see you all in a couple weeks.
Bye all.
Bye.